I'll leave it to you to.
All right. Yeah. Anyway, thanks, Nilesh, for joining us today. Really happy and excited for you to join this podcast. So I've always envied like those people who quit their cushy corporate jobs. So I know you work at PayPal before, right? And
Mhm.
I think on a blockchain based wallet payment as well. Could you tell me more about that at
So
PayPal?
my role at Venmo.
Yeah.
Right. So I was a head of peer-to-peer in crypto on the product engineering side at Venmo.
Mm.
And my objective was to essentially launch crypto trading on Venmo, similar to what PayPal had done in November 2021. So, I was just told, hey, look, what does it mean to have Venmo users buy, hold, and sell cryptocurrencies, and who are your users, and how do we get them to do it? So I started from that journey to working with every vertical in the company until it was finally launched in April. So it was quite a fascinating journey and taught me a lot about how money moves in the world today.
I see. Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, why did you decide to start off on your own at Acme? Or how did this idea, yeah, come about?
Yeah, man. So I was introduced to the world of blockchain in like early 2017. One of my
Mm-hmm.
best friends told me, "Hey, dude, you really got to check out this Bitcoin and Ethereum." And I'm like, "What? What is this?" And I started digging deeper, and I started using the blockchain, and I was pretty blown away by how money can move in a completely different way than we know today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And eventually, when I joined PayPal and Venmo, I got a deeper look into how money moves today, right? And what does that infrastructure look like? So I had this two perspectives, right? One was the future, because I literally saw that I felt the future based on using the blockchain. And at the same time, I saw how money moves today. Uh, and that kind of inspired me to take a leap of faith and sort of, bring the two worlds together.
Mm. Actually, I mean, on that note, um, I mean, everyone is still using Web2 payments, right? How do you convince everyone to join the Web3 space? Even if you see that it's more efficient, there could be an audit process. Because everything on the blockchain is transparent. You can put AML measures and all. So how do you convince, I mean, the idea of getting everyone from the Web2 to the Web3 space is that you must convince them of this product in the first place, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
No,
So,
absolutely. So,
mm,
well, I think it comes down to two things, right? Like, it really comes down to what's the value you are getting from transacting on the blockchain versus the cost. And the cost is not just fees, but it's also the learning curve, it's also the time, and it's also the overall fees that you pay, right? So, as long as there's enough ROI for people to use the blockchain and there is a compelling use case for them, then people will do it themselves, right? It's kind of like back in the day when everybody was wondering if online payments are going to be a thing or e-commerce is going to be a thing. Everybody's saying that, oh well, oh, you can now buy everything online, but users are saying that, well, I just go to a store and buy it. Why do I need to go to a website? Nobody's ever going to go to a website. And then Elon comes to PayPal and says, you know what, you can do online payments. I said, why do I need online payments if nobody wants to shop online? Everybody wants to go to the traditional route. So I would rather argue that the transition from, I guess, Web 1 to Web 2 in that sense, where people sort of onboarded to the concept of online payments, had online devices, mobile devices to trigger these payments, was a bigger switching cost than people who can use Web 2 to Web 3. Uh, and it just comes down to that, right? So what is the utility? Like, why would I want to use anything on the blockchain versus what's the cost for me to use it? And what my role and our mission is to reduce the element of cost. So it takes you 3 hours as a user to figure out your first transaction. Well, now it's 3 seconds. It takes you all of these different measures to secure your transactions. Well, now it's subconscious. So I guess the answer to your question is that you don't need to convince them. They need to be convinced themselves because nobody uses online payments because of the infrastructure. People use online payments because it makes their lives better without knowing what's happening in the background.
Mm. Very good point raised. And I think you mentioned as well about the switching cost, right? So I think there's something that I faced at work as well. So I work for, I'll say Singapore's payment company, right? And we're looking at like maybe cross-border payments or revolutionizing or revamping the Web2 space. And the main thing that I'm always hindered by is that, I mean, in transitioning from Web2 to Web3, there's, like you said, the switching cost. And, blockchain technology is very new. You have to train a lot of people to run it. You have to run a blockchain. The whole tech stack is very different. So
Mhm.
if something that already works in the Web2 space, how do you, I mean, even if you see that there are a lot of huge cost savings if you transition to Web3, but there's still this huge switching cost. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to like the like diving deep into the costs, right? So
Hmm.
so today, if you want to transition from Web 2 to Web 3, actually, I don't personally like that word, transitioning from Web 2 to Web 3. It's like telling an online customer you are moving from MySQL databases to MongoDB databases. Like I don't care. I'm just want to buy the shoe, right?
Yeah.
So like people don't care, for them, like blockchain is just another layer of infrastructure, like a database that gets them doing whatever they want to be doing. And people will not switch to the infrastructure. They will continue to do the behaviors that they already do, and they will switch to better technologies if it's more efficient. And today, one of the biggest barriers, at least in my opinion, for Web3 is the learning curve, right? And the sheer number of processes that the average person goes through. So let me give you an example, right? So we interviewed over like almost 500 people with a very
Hmm.
simple use case. Like this were not just crypto newbies, but crypto natives. I used to go to a bar. I used to give them an OpenSea link, and I said, buy it. There's a $2 NFT on Polygon. Buy it. And if you can buy it in 60 seconds, I will give you $10 right now. It's very simple, right? Just buy it. And they're like, well, there's
Yeah.
a buy now button. I can just click on buy it. What's the problem? Well, guess what? Out of the 500 people I interviewed, these are like regular people, right?
Hmm.
Zero did it. And it wasn't even that, give me a few more minutes or give me a few more seconds, I'll do it. They literally said, please leave me alone. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So even despite giving them free money and a free token, they still didn't want to do it, despite all the technology that is available in our ecosystem today. So that begs the
Right.
question, right? That was the main source of inspiration. Like, well, all of this is available, but this guy can't do a simple transaction. And that kind of helped us go backwards from that element, right? So we do our user research on like everyday people who have no idea how this works, right? I made my mom try it. I made my grandma try it. I made my nieces try it, right? So, for them, if they were able to do it, then it's a litmus test. And if they aren't able to do it, then, we are still very far away from any tangible adoption.
So this, I mean, doing all this research and all that, is that what bred this idea of you creating Acme? Or was
Yeah,
it,
man. So look,
yeah.
I mean, I've just been deeply inspired as I got into the rabbit hole of blockchain over the past, since 2017. Um,
Mm.
and I started by transferring bitcoins to my friend. Then, I used the PET and went on MakerDAO. I swapped tokens on OS's DEX. I did all of these, crazy things. And I just was amazed by how seamless it is. And I guess the sheer contrast of how seamless and automated these transactions are versus deep dive looking into the world of fintech at PayPal, and this is how it actually moves. Like it just made me convinced that this is the future. And I also realized that a lot of the bigger companies won't be likely to take a bet on self custody, right? Because self custody is a
Yeah.
very fundamental shift in every regard than the current financial models, which are all based on a custodian. So it's very unlikely for a big corporation to take regulatory bets and risks and all of those other things to move to something self-custodial, which is why I was convinced that this has to be built from ground up, and that's why I was inspired to take the bet on myself and make it happen.
Very inspiring. So, I mean, just curious, after you build this product, can your grandmother and your mother now transact on the blockchain?
Not
Have you
necessarily.
tried this litmus test again?
No. So that's the part, right? So it's kind of like PayPal built PayPal checkout back in the day, right? Hey, here's an easy way to pay online, and now people are like, okay, well, what do I buy online? There's nothing to buy online, so it makes no sense to, do an online payment. And that kind of rose the experimentation of different e-commerce websites, e-commerce marketplaces, people sort of taking a bet and selling books online, selling content online, selling merchandise online. It's kind of like a chicken and egg thing, right? So the cost of experimentation for e-commerce was extremely high because of a lack of infrastructure. Similarly, the cost to experiment with digital assets is very high, given the blockchain infrastructure. And what our place is essentially enabling these institutions who see value in digital assets to leverage our infrastructure, similar to how institutions who saw value in e-commerce use PayPal as a payments infrastructure. So we are like, okay, all of you guys who see value, I see X, Y, and Z value for my industry by using digital assets. And in order for me to enable this, I need to deal with this entire infrastructure to make it happen. And we can tell them that, hey, look, man, let me do it for you. And I will give you an experience just like PayPal checkout or Stripe, and you don't have to bother what happens in the background, and your users don't have to bother what happens in the background. And this way, your cost to experiment, your cost to scale becomes much lower. And this way, people are able to find a product market fit for digital assets much sooner. So we still are in very early phases for people like my mom or my grandma to use it for tangible, regular usage, like they use online payments. But I think lowering the barrier to entry will definitely pave the next step for adoption.
So, I mean, just take me through more of your product. Like, how can you, how do you bridge that gap between like the user and, blockchain transactions and,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned on the Angry website, it's just one tab, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's look at Stripe, right? Like during my time, I got a good rundown on how, Stripe was able to become a $600 billion venture, right? As PayPal and Square were there as incumbents. And it came down to two basic things, right? Like make the developers' life easier and make the users' life easier. Highest conversion and the lowest development cost. Like that was literally it. So those are our two first principles. That like, hey, you want to get paid, or just go to Stripe, one API call, and anyone can get paid. So we try to build a similar experience in which any developer or wants to do a blockchain transaction, which is the intent. I want my user to do this, and it just configures it with one API call, and that enables any of their customers to sort of do the experience, complete their transaction as easily as possible. And behind the scenes, all the dots are connected by us, similar to how Stripe has essentially connected all of those dots, right? There's payment processor, there's chargebacks, there's risk management, there's fraud, there's all of these different elements that the developer would have to otherwise configure. In the same way, there's a lot of different elements that are in the blockchain space, right? Account abstraction, gas, multi-chain, key management, on-ramp, off-ramps, and dexes and whatnot. Like all of these are different pieces. So our platform essentially is connecting all of those dots together to offer a one API, one type experience for the developer and the user.
So do you allow decentralized app developers to build on top of your product? I mean, is it like some kind of seamless integration, or how does it work on the back end?
Yeah, so a developer can just come to our platform and say that, hey, look, man, I want my user to do this, and I want them to complete this transaction on this smart contract. And
Right.
so they do that, and then we are able to effectively figure out like, hey, look, what's the best way for the user to be able to complete that transaction in a peer-to-peer fashion. Um, there's a lot of different integrations. So we've been design partners with Safe, and we got a grant from them as well. We've been design partners with the different strategic on-ramp and off-ramps. We've been design partners. There's a bunch of these infrastructure pieces that we identified are required by the user to complete this transaction. And we've essentially been working with all of these guys to figure out the least path of resistance to make that happen, right? So I'm a product guy, right? So I just look at the end goal, and I look at the current state, and I look at the best, and I've looked at the tools that are required to get to the end state. And then we basically crafted a platform to make it the least, friction path to make that happen. And yeah, it turns out that it complied with a lot of the fundamentals that Paradigm had listed in the intent-based architecture research. So that really helped us position us in an interesting way, because before, like, a lot of people and investors were like, hey, so are you a wallet? I'm like, no, I'm connecting with a wallet. So are you an on-ramp? No, well, I'm connecting with an on-ramp. Oh, well, are you a abstraction? Well, no, I'm connecting with Safe. So they're like, then what are you? And I think this intent-based network kind of sort of baked our platform in a very good position, because now we are the ones who essentially connect the dots through all of these different infrastructures that otherwise the user would have to do, which causes a lot of churn.
I see. Okay. Um, yeah, I think Kurt might want to ask some
Yeah.
questions as well.
No, no. I think like the way that you sum it up was is very good. Because as you mentioned, everyone's talking about the different technologies like on-ramp, wallets, account injection, and so ultimately, like to get to onboard the other users that are not in Web3, um, just the product experience matters a lot. And so packaging as an intent, what the users intend to do on this product. I think that's a good summary in terms of like how do you, yeah, I'll just kind of summarize a
Yeah.
bit about what you think.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, think of it this way, right? A very good analogy is like Visa and Mastercard, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many people know how Visa and Mastercard work? Like, how do they know? How many people know how the underlying interchange infrastructure works? How many know how the underlying forex and the credit infrastructure works? How many people know how the internal routing infrastructure works? How many people know how the underlying correspondent bank works? No, nobody knows, but everybody uses it.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you expect people to take a step backwards to use a technology that is supposedly built to make life even easier, right?
Yeah.
So the first principles are what I have learned during my time at Venmo, that people in the payment space, right? What does the average user care about? For the average user, a payment is a very subconscious action. It's deeply rooted in trust and convenience. When no matter where in the day you are, you want to pay someone, you take out the card or Apple Pay and just pay it. And both the merchant and the user have this subconscious faith that just by doing one tap, it's done. Money will reach the guy. I am good to go. It's all sorted out.
Yeah.
So you can't expect the user to do any more than that one tap that they're already used to today.
Right. But I think so that is it from the product standpoint, but also like from the consumer standpoint, like the usage of, I guess, just cryptocurrencies, or even, let's say, stable coins itself. They don't understand the concept, let alone trust it. So that's a very big hurdle as well. And how do you see that in terms of where
Yeah, so I think the trust will be built by institutions into this infrastructure, similar to how big institutions buying into e-commerce builds trust into e-commerce, right? Like, if like a random Joe Schmo is selling, a watch online, you'll probably not trust them. But if Rolex themselves are selling the watch online, then you'll probably trust them, right? So the same way, there's so many assets that are available on chain. Anybody can create an asset on chain, just like they can create a website on chain. But how many of them do you trust? So as bigger institutions start issuing the digital assets and attaching some form of value and utility to these digital assets, that will propel their customers and their ecosystems to leverage this asset. instead of people leveraging the technology just to leverage the technology.
Yeah.
It's going to be the actual underlying asset and the trust in that underlying asset that will propel the use case and the utility to transact with that digital asset.
And I mean, drawing from your experience as well, like building this, building cryptocurrency at both PayPal and Venmo, like what are some of the key takeaways or frameworks and strategies that you think current Web3 founders or developers can take away in terms of approaching both? I think one is product building, and second, just in terms of selling it to the customers as well. I think that's something that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think number one, it's very important to define who exactly your customers are. Like this, a lot of Web3 founders, I ask them a simple question: who's your target audience? Like, who's your dream customer?
Yeah.
And what do you want them to do? Like, if I could get this one guy to do this one thing, then my business will be a success. Who's that guy? And why will he use you? That's the table stakes, right? You start with that. Who is my customer, and why will they use me, and why will they not use anyone else but me? Like, very first principles of PM 101. If you are catering to end consumers, if you're a direct to consumer application, then my experience at PayPal and Venmo teach me that the users only care about three things when it comes to payments. It comes to convenience, comes to security, and it comes to fees. It should be as cheap as possible, it should be as easy as possible, and it should be as safe as possible. My money is safe. It's always going to be there. I am going to pay next to nothing, which is why all the credit card fees are to the merchant and not the user, so that the user always thinks that they're paying nothing for online payment. And the last thing is that, it's just super quick. So you need to have these traits as to what your customers look for and why they would use a product.
Right, but also at the same time, like when PayPal was building this, or like in the early days of, let's say, like 0 to 1 payments wise, this is what like the customers care about, and this is what the ideal kind of customer needs and wants are. But in the case of the current customers, especially Web3, like how do you define what the ideal customer look like? Like, are you building for the current users of Web3 today, or like the future as well? Like, what would you say the ideal customer is?
No, that's a great question. So our target focus is not on the Web3 ecosystem. We are using the Web3 ecosystem to partner with and integrate the right tech with to bring this to the Web2 world. Like, if you think about it, right? I mean, a lot of wallets have like millions of users, but if you look at on-chain transactions, like OpenSea has 183,000 monthly active wallets. Coinbase has 9 million users. Venmo has 90 million users. So if you look at the divergence, right, it's very significant.
Yeah.
So and there's two outcomes to that. There's two reasons for that. One is the utility of existing assets. So people who are well versed, aka crypto native, they care and value these crypto native assets. So, you will buy Shiba Inu, you will trade Moon Rocket coins and whatever coins are out there, because you see value in the ecosystem, you understand the ecosystem, and you are technically capable to transact in this ecosystem. So that's not the world that we care about, because the overall market size of that world is very small, right? I mean, there's so many different players targeting 183,000 monthly active wallets. It's not really worth it.
Yeah.
What we are rather focused on is on real world players. So I am talking to like real world institutions and real world customers who grill the living hell out of me, telling me that crypto is a scam, crypto is a Ponzi, why you're doing it, why do I need this? Those are the people nobody talks to. And I'm able to, over time, have a clear conversation with them to the point that they get it. They're like, okay, I see why I need to use this. I see why I need to use you. I see what this can do for my business. So for me, at Acme, our focus is on real world institutions across their sectors who want to leverage blockchain technology and offer it to their customers, just like big brands took a bet on e-commerce technology and offer online shopping to their customers, right? So for me, the technology is the how. It's not the what. And what we are doing is we are talking to real world institutions, like, in different sectors, right? Gaming, loyalty, commodities, and the likes that you already have suspected, and trying to understand why would you use me? Like, what value will I bring to you, and how will I do that? And that layer of experimentation, that layer of finding product market fit from these institutions is step one. And once you are able to convince them, once you're able to speak their language, once you're able to tell them that, look, man, it's worth a shot, try it out, right? Like, what's the harm? And we are able to pull that off because our cost to enable a pilot and enable an experiment for them is super low, as opposed to them spending 6 to 12 months, right? You see Starbucks with their NFT collections that, have no churn. If you look at Reddit's NFT collections, they have like 2,500 transactions on their NFTs lately, right? So like all of them have a high, but then they all sort of go down. There's no sustainable usage because there's no product market fit.
Yeah.
So, and they are not willing to take another step because the cost of experimentation is so high, right? That it has to be a big deal or nothing. So our thesis from a product point of view is very simple. Like, what do you want your customers to do? And what will digital assets do for your customers? And then we ask their customers, like, what do you want to do with this thing? Do you have any interest with this thing? And then we sort of tie the threads. And that journey, combined with the very close partnerships we have with our Web3 partners, then figures out how. I mean, this is essentially my sort of bread and butter as a product manager over the last few years, right? It's like sitting down with every person in the company. That here's a CMO, here's a CEO, here's a CFO, here's all these guys. Like, hey, look, man, what do you want? And how can digital assets grow your business? It's just like when I was at Microsoft, Microsoft did not sell Excel. Microsoft did not sell, Azure. Microsoft sold digital transformation. They knocked on every enterprise's door. And I was a part of that process when I was at Microsoft Teams, selling them collaboration, selling them digital transformation, selling them why your business needs to go online and what it's going to do for your institution. And they bought that. They did not buy Teams, right? They did not buy, hey, you should use the Azure bot framework because it has all of these cool features and it'll be able to hit like 20,000 bot requests a second. Like, but like, man, I'm a school. Why are you talking about bot frameworks to me? And so I built a bot for Moodle, which was one of the biggest learning management systems and the first open source bot for Microsoft Azure for education that enabled teachers to ask a question. Hey, how many of my students forgot to submit their homework? And boop, gives you like a full response. And the teachers are like, whoa, this thing is awesome. I want to use it. So it's really about going down to why do I care for my customers? Why would any of my customers care about me? Like really coming from that humble point of view, leaving all the technology and the how aside and figuring out on the what and the why. And then going backwards from the what and the why to designing the how. Instead of designing the how and then figuring out the what and the why.
No, I love how you break down into I think first is the how and the why, and also the two key customer segments that you have to sell to, right? Number one would be the large institutions, and second, their clients as well. So from your experience speaking to all these two key segments, like what was the turning point where they understood that, hey, actually digital assets makes a lot of sense. It's something that I want to explore, I want to adopt. Like what is the tipping point for these two target customers?
So it comes down to a few things. Like the biggest pain point that I have seen across the board in the real world is cross-border transactions. Domestic transactions are pretty efficient in the jurisdiction that you are. Governments are making lots of strides to federate the entire systems and make it efficient. That's been good. But a lot of countries, a lot of people struggle with cross-border payments. So that, of course, is one critical challenge that the blockchain, I think, is poised to solve. And the second one is liquid secondary markets for any kind of a digital asset. Because a lot of assets that are available today are fragmented regionally, right? Like a lot of people don't have access to, assets that they would want to hold their wealth in. For example, I read an article the other day about how these farmers were going to the gas station, pumping lots of oil because they knew that the price of oil is going to go up against their currency.
Yeah,
And then the gas station stopped pumping more oil into bags because they're like, no, we can't let you take all the oil. So now imagine if an oil company can start tokenizing oil, and now suddenly anybody in the world has access to hold the money in oil. And not only hold the money in oil, but have access to a global liquid market of oil. That's the second one. That's the second utility that I see. So secondary market, peer-to-peer, liquid secondary peer-to-peer markets for any kind of an asset that people hold value. And and the third one, what I would say, is a play-to-earn economy. So there's a lot of, given that there's a lot of income inequality around the world, I think blockchain is poised to solve that problem, because a dollar in India is very different from a dollar in the US, the worth of it, actually, at least. So if you consider a user as a user, no matter where they're from, and if you can sort of reward them for certain engagement, if you can reward them for certain actions, definitive actions that you want them to do, then rewarding users financially to generate a particular outcome for your company is, I think, a very efficient, it's actually a very powerful narrative that blockchain can drive. So I think these are the three overall sort of problem or opportunity spaces where blockchain can have a key impact. And then, of course, it's about sort of targeting the different companies and the enterprises and the verticals in these spaces and figuring out how your technology can solve that opportunity for them.
I think, maybe just to wrap it up as well. So based on your experience building both at PayPal, Venmo, and now starting your own company, what are some of the key lessons you've learned, as well as like strategies I would say in terms of that you would give for upcoming founders or builders that are looking to build good products in space?
Definitely. So I think the first lesson I would give is focus on the use case instead of the technology. Don't miss the forest for the trees. Know why you matter and what is it that you're trying to solve. If you can't tell anyone this is why what you're building is worth it in like less than 10 seconds, then you need to work on it. The second thing that I would advise founders in this space is that users are going to treat anything on the blockchain like money in their bank account. It doesn't matter whether it's self-custodial. It doesn't matter whether it's on the blockchain. It doesn't matter whether it's peer-to-peer. For me, it's like money. It's like my savings account, and it's how I use my savings account. And if you're not able to provide that layer of security and trust and reliability and convenience to the user as they enjoy in today's fintech infrastructure, then it'll be very hard for you to sell them on that. Like of course, we talked a lot about centralized exchanges getting compromised and stuff, which is of course a problem. But then we also see a lot of Web3 exploits, right? Like with Kyber and with all multi-chain, and all of these bridges have been exploited. One of my friends, and he's like a crypto native guy. He was traveling around, and then he came back and he wanted to do a grid swap, and he didn't keep up with the news that multi-chain had been compromised, and he did a swap on multi-chain, and he just lost all his money. Yeah. Like if you say something like that, to like an average person, you're never going to touch it with a 10-foot-long pole, right? So security is extremely paramount. It doesn't matter whether it's self-custodial. It doesn't matter that you are a wallet and not a bank account. You cannot, under any circumstance, underscore the importance of security, no matter what you are doing. And if you can't have concrete sort of declarations of your security, if you can't give SLAs, if you can't give liability protection, if you can't give any sort of guarantees behind the technology, nobody, and I can confirm you that nobody will use you and nobody will care about you, because you will just be a garage project. And since you're dealing in the fintech space, all said and done, you will not be able to acquire any customers until you're able to convince them that you're safe.
I think that's one of the key difference between a Web2 versus Web3 product. Like in Web3, security is to be at the core of kind of decision in product, like product decision. So something that I think a lot of founders don't really think about as much, as they're still trying to find the users for the market. That's all. But it should be at the core of like every product.
Exactly. Like, look, when I was at Venmo and we dealt with this stuff, there was a lot that went behind it. There's customer support, there's chargeback protection, there is legalities, legal approvals, compliances. I had to talk to like 50 different teams just to get a sign off from everyone to make this happen, right? It was a different beast, right? There's SLAs that you need to manage. Every single counterparty needs to uphold their end of the promises. There's like legal, penalties in case something doesn't work out as it was agreed upon to be. Like, this is serious business, right? And that's what you need when people are depending on you for daily financial transactions. You can't just be like, oh well, sorry, somebody, we mistakenly logged our private keys in our servers and suddenly our wallets are compromised. Then like, oh well, too bad. So I'm sorry, our multi-sig got compromised, hacker compromised it. Like, oh well, what are the repercussions? I don't know. We're trying to negotiate with the hacker. Maybe he'll give the money back, maybe he won't, maybe there'll be a lawsuit, maybe there won't, So we can't be in the wild west anymore if you're looking for meaningful adoption. And it's really, really important to understand and sort of internalize how you can be a beacon of trust for your customers, no matter where in the infrastructure you fall. The reason why we use Safe is because $46 billion worth of assets are using Safe. It's the most reliable non-custodial infrastructure that's battle tested over years, period. And if anybody is concerned about the custody of assets by using Acme, I simply tell them you are relying on the most secure infrastructure for self-custody on the planet. There's second to none. And nobody can build this. It can only be built over time, right? So like these things are super important to make people trust you with their money. And that's why financial institutions have such a strong foothold. And that's why moving to Web3 is so hard, because Web3 is the wild west. There are legal protections, there's central bank protections, there are specific banking protections. There's so many guidelines and bureaucracy and checks and balances that give that subconscious trust to every customer who has their money stored in the bank. And unless we are able to be on par with that, then users will not be convinced because they already have something better.
Maybe, Richard, do you have anything to add? So I think you have built DeFi products previously and right now also looking at it. So I know you're the host, but what's your experience or your thoughts on this?
Sorry, on DeFi products?
Or just like security in terms of like the importance of security, or how do you approach security?
Yeah, I think in the crypto market or the Web3 space, right? Like security is paramount. And I think the market is efficient enough to pick out or weed out all the projects that have ended up in security failure. So you look at any kind of bridges, you look at any kind of projects. Once they've had a hack or they've drained some funds, the project just dies out. No one wants to use it anymore. Because the whole concept of Web3 technology is that it's decentralized. It's really up to the user to own that product, or is a P2P kind of structure, right? So if you don't trust the inherent code that is running for you, then the product just fails in essence. So yeah, that's my take on this.
How do you approach security in terms of like building payments or DeFi products?
How do you approach it?
Yeah.
That's a very, very good question, and that's very loaded as well.
Okay.
I don't think I can.
Okay, we'll give it for the next next time. But yeah, maybe just move on, moving on to the next question. But Yeah, so these are kind of the frameworks. I think very good points in terms of frameworks on how founders should approach building products in Web3 and kind of gaining trust with institutions. The other group of people I think that is also very important to building up this Web3 space are the talents. So developers, marketers, product people in the space. Um, any advice you will give in terms of them navigating their career in this space?
The marketers,
Or
which
I guess
space, which
because
ones?
maybe let me rephrase my question. So in Web two is I think the career path is pretty fixed, right? As a Web two developer, you know what you need to do to become from an engineer to a staff engineer to the sort of tech lead CTO.
Yeah.
What sort of advice will you give to perhaps maybe developers navigating the Web3 space on how they could
Yeah.
develop their career?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I love most about the Web3 space compared to the Web2 space, that it's ripe with opportunities and it's super merit focused. Like, because it's easy to prove your worth, right? Like, if you are a solid developer and you've contributed to something solid, number one, it's verifiable if it's solid. And if that happens, it's very easy for anybody to hire you, right? Because like, it's very easy to work on any project. A lot of projects are open source. A lot of projects have open communities. So if it's very easy to prove your worth, and if you are worth it, then it's very easy to find the best opportunity and climb up multiple ladders. Unlike being in bigger companies, wherein you are locked by these siloed contracts and siloed engagements, in which even if you outperform for a year or two, you still are obliged by your senior leadership to promote you, and that has several third-party constraints. Like, maybe you haven't been, you just got promoted. Maybe there were other factors that were involved. So, like, it's a lot less nonsense. It's a lot more opportunistic, and it's a lot more global. So don't let you are only limited by your imagination. That's number one. Number two is, if you are not an engineer and if you have another secret sauce from the Web2 space, you have a lot more opportunity in the Web3 space, because there's a sheer gap of supply and demand, right? And as people move, as the space overall moves towards the retail consumer space who are not crypto native, you need those people to speak their language to recite those narratives, right? Rather than being completely tech focused and catering to this little bubble that we are in. So, I mean, long story short, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's up for your taking, and it's all about you exploring these communities, exploring these opportunities. And even if there is not a defined role, people will create one for you, because there is liquidity, there is demand, and there, as long as you're providing value, it's much quicker. That you don't have to go through these defined sort of checks and balances at every step of the way and go through the bureaucracy. You just go. And I think that is a very significant advantage. That if you, and the last part is, if you believe in the space, and if you believe that this space will grow, then your domain knowledge that you will start today will be much higher and give you a much better edge than people who start believing in crypto 3 years down the line when it gets more mainstream, and then they start from scratch. So I would rather take a junior person who has 3 years of crypto experience than take a senior person who has 0 years of crypto experience. So, I mean, it's all about, do you want to take a bet on the technology, and do you want to take a bet on the team and the product that you are working for? And if you do that, you have significant more upside in terms of tokens, in terms of liquidity, in terms of domain knowledge, and in terms of career growth, than what these defined industries will offer to you today.
Very, very good. 2 points to sum up the whole conversation. Yeah, I think that's all the questions from my side. I really enjoyed the conversation. There's a lot more that I would have asked about, but I think we're almost nearing 1 hour.
Yeah, no time
Yeah,
for thanks for having me.
we could catch up another time. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed the conversation. That's all from my side. Richard, anything to add?
Yeah,
Right.
I think Nilesh really summed up everything I wanted to say as well. Actually, I mean, just a question from my end. People always ask when Bitcoin is going to hit all-time high. So I'm not going to pose that question to you,
We can
but
cut
I'll
out
ask
this
you
part.
like, yeah, I'm going to phrase it in a different way, but
No, it's
so
okay.
sorry?
We can cut out this part.
Okay. No, I'm just going to ask like, where do you see crypto or blockchain technology in 5 years' time? Like in terms of
Yeah.
integration with certain Web2 elements or cross-border payments, where's the main impact it's going to be in 5 years' time?
Mhm. So first off, I would like to start answering that question by saying that I am the quintessential top signal. Uh, I moved, I quit PayPal and I founded Acme in May or June 2021, and that's where the market's crashed 80%. So don't listen to whatever I'm saying. You're definitely going to lose your money because I did. Now, but I'm more of like a overall trends, you know, value rather than looking at a particular tech or a piece. Um, I think people are slowly but surely understanding the worth of Bitcoin at least. Uh, with the increasing issues with respective central banks, like we've seen in Argentina, like I can go on with the list of all countries out there. You can see the sheer rise in distress and distrust in people with the current financial infrastructure. And this is a trend that I assume will only exaggerate over the coming 5 years. Because the fiscal deficit is higher than the GDP, and at this point, I won't get into details, but you can say that it's very hard to salvage, from the current mess that a lot of the countries and their respective currencies are in. And you've seen how that negatively impacts a lot of people. And that's one piece. And the second thing is you can't revolt or you can't fight a system you depend on unless you have an alternative. So if I'm in Argentina and if I have to hold pesos, no matter how down the pesos go, I have no other option but to use pesos because I have to have pesos in my bank and there's no other way for me to do an online transaction. So, I mean, I think blockchain, public permissionless blockchains are distressed to move away from these distressed infrastructures that have been going on for the last century. So, like, I'm trying to be as logical as I can, just looking at the writing on the wall, right? So, well, the current systems are collapsing. The only promising alternative is blockchain permissionless technology. Um, so, A plus B, I do think blockchain will be the answer for a lot of people to say permissionless, verifiable, non-custodial infrastructure to store their money and use their money. So I don't know which blockchain will succeed. I don't know which form will be adopted. I don't know which assets will take place. And the last thing you can see is like all these virtual asset estimations, right? Some people say it's going to be $16 trillion by 2030. Some people say it's going to be $5 to $6 trillion. But the same guys who are dissing blockchain and cryptocurrencies are the same guys who are championing the concept of digital assets. So, if you're not going to use digital assets on the blockchain, where else are you going to use digital assets? So I think these three fundamentals that are known to me right now make me bullish on public blockchain technology. Now, how the technology shapes up, which technologies shape up to win, that's yet to be seen.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for your insights. Do you have anything to
No,
add?
I think that's all from my
Yeah.
side. Recently went to Istanbul as well. I think it was quite interesting to see because there were like a lot of Bitcoin exchanges, and then like taxi drivers, they're all like they're using Binance, they're using accepting payment through a lot of them is accepting payment through blockchain as well, crypto. So it was very like eye-opening to see like the different adoption because we are from Singapore, right? So in terms of just us using crypto, it's more of just to trade and have fun, but it's quite a different use case like overall. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, will you be heading to India blockchain again?
I'm not sure. I have a bunch of things next
Okay.
week that I'm in Bangalore too. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be hitting this conference just yet. I don't think we are ready for conferences. We're
Yeah.
still sort of cooking
Okay.
our own seats for now. But yeah, hopefully we'll get to catch up. Are you going to be there?
Yes, I'm going to be there. There might be quite some events as well that will be good. So I can send those over to you, and then we'd love to see if we can grab a
Cool.
coffee or
I'm in Bangalore till the 3rd, so if you want to catch up
okay.
if there's anything else, we can get
Okay, I'll be arriving on the third. I think I need to check first.
down. I'll be there 3rd evening, so if you get there in the morning, you can probably come.
Okay, I'll see you straight from the airport then. Okay.
For sure. Because of the guard. All right, Kev, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope to see you soon. Yeah, Richard, same for you.
All right, cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.